Mark Ogden's back in the building, so you know we have to be talking about Manchester United, and his smile quickly went into a little non-smile. Mark, we were having this conversation, I mean, just yesterday, and you said it really is a telltale sign of the times, knowing that you are, with all due respect to Kazakhstan, you're going to Kazakhstan to cover Manchester United in the Europa League now, and that just goes to show you exactly the level United are. So is this the worst team that we've seen in 30 years, or at least in the post-Fergie era?
Oh, definitely it's the worst team in the post-Fergie era. People talk about the David Moyes team, but you have to remember that team had people like Nemanja Vidic, Rio Ferdinand, Patrice Evra, Robin van Persie, Wayne Rooney, you know, some great players, and they underperformed, but they still had a team of players that could go to most places and get a result. You know, and even in that season under David Moyes, they got some decent results. You know, this squad, for me, it's just lacking in any kind of depth of experience. And, you know, they've got some good young kids coming through, but Mason Greenwood's 17. And to ask him to be the third choice striker, it's just too much. In 30 years, well, you know, I can't think of any team that was worse than this during the Premier League era, because they were tended to be the champions or more often than not. This is the worst start since 92-93. They won the league that season. There's no way this team's going to win the league this season. So I think it's the worst United team and squad since, you know, the dark days of Fergie when they were losing 5-1 at Man City in '89. That's where they are right now. They're in a bad place, and I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Where do you see this squad going? Because like you said, there's a lot of inexperience in this squad, but there are still a lot of players that, you know, are quite young. You know, you mentioned Mason Greenwood. You also have, you know, Daniel James, who's just come in and been a bright spark. You have Tony Martial, you have Marcus Rashford, Jesse Lingard, who are still quite young and, of course, have been around for quite some time now. So do you think there's some, you know, comfort in that this squad can grow, or is it just that you're not seeing, you know, the star in them to become the likes of Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic and, you know, Dwight York, etc.?
The danger is that the young players that they've got at the minute with potential can almost be, I won't say ruined, but their careers can be, you know, stunted by playing in a losing team or a team that's not winning, because to develop young players, it obviously helps to be alongside great players, which, you know, the likes of Neville, Scholes, Beckham, etc. The benefit that people talked about, you couldn't win anything with kids back in the 90s, but that team that they came through had people like Steve Bruce, Eric Cantona, Gary Pallister, Dennis Irwin, you know, players that would bring these guys along and almost protect them when times are going bad. And I don't see anybody in this squad that is going to protect these players. You know, the most experienced player is probably Paul Pogba. Now, Jesse Lingard, you mentioned, he's 27. You know, so he is one of the senior pros.
Exactly.
And, you know, who do the young players turn to for guidance, for support? You know, Harry Maguire is probably the obvious candidate. He's a big, strong leader, but he's not really got the greatest top-level experience, you know, with due respect to Leicester and to Hull and Sheffield United. So there's just an absence of this horrible word United need leaders, this leadership thing, but it means more than just being a guy like Roy Keane on the pitch. It just means somebody that a young player like Daniel James or Mason Greenwood could look to and say, he's been there and done it, so I'm going to follow him today, or, you know, he's going to look after me today. And I think that's the problem, you know, that they've let players go. You know, Lukaku for me wasn't good enough, Sanchez didn't perform, Chris Smalling's had his time. All well and good to let these players move on, but you need to replace them. They haven't replaced them, and it's now, what, we're in September, they can't sign a player till January. Where are they going to be in January? You know, they've got Leicester at home next, and that is a really tough game for United, and I do worry for United this season, I really do.
Is that your biggest worry now then, squad depth? Because like you said, of course, let go Lukaku and he's off doing his thing. You know, Alexis Sanchez as well gone, Chris Smalling. Whether they were good enough or a fit for United or not, the point is now, when you see someone not doing so well, or one of the youngsters that probably need a little more experience, at least you could call on them as a backup, whereas now it seems that United just don't have that backup at all either.
No, I think they are an injury away from a crisis in every area of the pitch. So if Harry Maguire got injured, or Pogba got injured, or Rashford, they've got nobody to replace those guys. They really haven't. I mean, Pogba gets a lot of criticism at United, and sometimes rightly so, because there are games when he goes missing, doesn't perform, but other times he's outstanding. You know, he's the guy that makes it tick. He's the one potentially world-class player in the team. I don't think David De Gea is anymore, but Pogba still is, you know, and I think if Pogba isn't there, the midfield it's so limited. You know, they've got honest players like McTominay, and I'm struggling to think, Matic, you know, Fred hasn't kicked a ball this season. Will he kick a ball? Juan Mata.
Let's forget Fred's still on Man United.
You know, Juan Mata's been a top player in his time, but not anymore, you know.
There.
Not anymore. Herrera's gone, Fellaini went. There's a real loss of players that have been around the block, and you know, if they are without a striker up front, you know, Anthony Martial missed a game at Southampton at the weekend, so they have two fit strikers, Marcus Rashford and Mason Greenwood, who's 17.
Exactly.
So that is the problem. you know, they could have signed Mario Mandzukic at the end of the window. A deal was agreed with Juventus and it would have cost around, I think, £14 million. 1-4, not 4-0. That for me would have been just a no-brainer because, yes, he's not the future, but he's a guy that ticks that box of being an experienced pro who the players can turn to and he can be a plan B in the last 20 minutes of a game. You need to score a goal to get back into it. You know, Mandzukic has been around the block. They haven't got any of those players. I understand Solskjaer's decision to try and change the makeup of the squad and make it a younger squad, a more hungry squad, but they really need some experience in there, and I think they're going to be some difficult days ahead.
Well, finally, like we clearly, if you didn't pick up on it by now, Manchester United have a lot of problems. But one thing that's not been a problem for them so far is Daniel James. A lot of people, despite the dark cloud hovering over Old Trafford, have been singing his praises. He has been showing a spark that he could definitely become something great if he isn't, you know, pretty great already. So what's needed for him to actually fulfill that potential? Because last thing we want, like you said, is for his career to get stagnated, because United right now are stagnated.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want him to be another Adnan Januzaj, you know, another guy that bursts out of the scene, that's a real talent, and who's played too much early on, played far too much, and it got to him, you know. And I think the danger with Daniel James is that he's probably the top scorer now with 3 goals, and I think he's had a great start to the season, fantastic pace. But he's 21, he'll get injuries, he'll get tired, he'll get fatigued, and I think he needs looking after before, you know, it hits the wall. But who comes in? If Daniel James isn't playing because he needs a rest, who comes in? That is the concern, because the depth isn't there, and they really haven't got any options. So you take out Daniel James, you have to change the system or the way they played in order to give him a rest. And I think the one thing I think with Solskjaer is I think he is aware of the fact that young players need protecting. I think he will do that, but who replaces Daniel James when he's not playing? And a big endowment of Man United right now is the fact that we're talking about who replaces the 21-year-old that's just started playing for them. You know, we're not talking about who replaces Ruud van Nistelrooy, who replaces Wayne Rooney, it's who replaces Daniel James, you know. So it's, yeah, like I say, difficult times ahead.
Difficult times ahead indeed. We could go on and on and on about Manchester United, and something tells me we will be going on and on and on about them and their problems unless they can find a way to fix them this season.